Good morning. I want to wish you all a very happy feast of the Holy Trinity. This is not a cerebral feast. It's not. And we need to know that, and we need to know why it's not. Because I think it's very possible for us to be a little embarrassed about the Holy Trinity because we don't understand it. When people challenge us on the Holy Trinity to kind of backpedal. But that's because it's a mystery. And we don't really, I think, sometimes understand what a mystery is. A mystery is not something I can't know anything about. A mystery is something I can't know everything about. A mystery is a divine reality which I couldn't know, which we're not capable of knowing of our own reason, just of thinking through things. And something that we could not know without God revealing it to us. And which even after He has revealed it to us, we don't understand in totality. Not because it isn't wholly true, not because there's some contradiction involved in it, but because of the limits of our own minds. For instance, I can stand outside this church on every side of it, and I can see part of the church. But because of the limits of my human nature, because of the limits of the fact that I have to see with eyes, I can only see that part of the church which I am able to look at. I can't be seeing this church from every angle at the same time. And because of the fact that I have a limited intelligence, I'm only going to understand as much as I can understand. And this is even with a building that is finite. When it comes to God, there are certain things we can know by reason alone. 300 years before Christ was born in Bethlehem, there were philosophers in Greece in the midst of a polytheistic and, by that time, frankly, atheistic society, who said, there has to be a God and there can only be one. They got in trouble for it. You're corrupting the youth. You're teaching them all sorts of falsehood. You're keeping them from being good citizens who worship all of our gods. But what were they getting at? What did they realize? They realized that there can't be more than one God, because by definition, God lacks nothing, is absolutely perfect, has the infinite perfection. There must be a God, first of all, because otherwise nothing else could exist. There has to be someone who exists who's capable of bringing other things into existence, but who didn't need something to bring him into existence. Otherwise, nothing could exist. If I'm going to start building a building by taking a brick and setting it in the air, and then getting another brick and trying to put it on top of it fast enough, I'll be at this all day. I need a foundation, and that foundation itself is resting on bedrock. And if ultimately we don't have something which is resting, on which things can rest, like bedrock, we can't build anything. Nothing can exist unless there is one being at least. And they said not only at least, but there can't be more. Unless there is one being upon which everything rests, upon which everything is built, upon which everything is founded, and from which everything comes. And so 300 years before Christ, pagan philosophers in Greece were able to say, without a shadow of a doubt, there has to be one God. And there can only be one God, because if there are two gods, the only thing that can differentiate them is that one has something the other lacks, in which case that one lacks something, he's not God. You can't be God if you lack something. But all of this cerebral thinking and careful, fine-tuned arguments about what God is can never approach to the question of who God is. What am I? I'm a human being. Just from knowing that, you can know all sorts of things about me. That naturally I have 2 eyes, 2 ears, a nose. Right? I must have had a mom and a dad. However old I am, it means I've lived a certain length of time. I've probably experienced different things. I live in Oklahoma, so I'm probably familiar with certain sorts of things. I'm a priest, therefore I went through studies and so on and so forth. You can know a lot of things about me. But to know me, or for me to know any one of you, for any one of us to be known in who we are, we have to let someone in. Unless you're the kind of person who wears your whole life on your sleeve and runs into some random stranger in a Walmart and says, "Oh, I need to tell you everything about myself," which is highly imprudent. You don't just entrust who you are to everyone. You guard it, you protect it, and when you reveal it, you want to know that you're revealing it in such a way as it will be understood and preserved and will not be mistaken or misused. And so God revealed and wanted to reveal in time not just that he's one God and that there is no other, which he needed to reveal, not because reason can't come to it, but because people run off into all sorts of silly ideas. And so he needed to take one people and teach them there is one God, and that is I. And then when they finally got that, when they understood that totally and well, then he revealed who he is. And that who he is 3. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. 3 persons, not 3 parts of one God, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, but who are wholly God, each of them, and together. So the Father is not the Son, and the Son is not the Father. The Father is not the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit is not the Father. The Son is not the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit is not the Son. And yet all 3 are God. And what this reveals to us about the interior life of God is that God is a communion of love. There are all sorts of things we can come to understand with our finite minds, even just by seeing the way that God has made images of this in the world. To understand that in God there is a lover, there's the one beloved, and there is the love between them. And then to see in the world all sorts of copies and symbols and signs of this wherever we have a man and a woman who love each other so much that there's a 3rd person that comes of this love. It's an icon in the world of the Trinity. Does this mean God is a father and a mother and a child? No. It's a sign of a total unity, an absolute unity in the Godhead of 3 distinct but inseparable persons. And why has this been protected? Why is this so crucial to our faith? Why does this impact us here and now today? It's because during the first 100 years after the liberation of the church from persecution, there were some major controversies that needed to be dealt with. There were some major arguments within the church about who is Jesus Christ. Is he merely a man who has been dubbed the Son of God? No. Is he merely the Son of God who seems to be, he's kind of clothing himself with humanity, but it really didn't belong to him? No. Is he 2 persons? Is he a human being that has been possessed by the second person of the Holy Trinity? No. In each of these false attempts to clarify who Jesus is, to simplify who Jesus is, forced the church to clarify who he really is in relation to his Father, that he is the Son of God. The creed that we profess is a creed about who Jesus is in relation to his Father, who the Holy Spirit is, and this working of three persons in our lives, in the world, in which the Father desires us to be made children, made sons, not just by dubbing us, I hereby declare you my son, but by conforming us, configuring us to his only begotten Son, his natural Son, his Son who is God, but who has taken upon himself our human nature, is therefore capable of joining us to himself through our common humanity, and then drawing us back into the embrace of the Trinity. And doing all this through the working of the Holy Spirit, who has been poured out into the church to sanctify and to heal and to restore us and to motivate us from the inside, from within our souls, to cooperate perfectly and totally with the will of God. If there has ever been a saint, it's because of the Holy Trinity. If there will ever be a saint, if any one of us has hopes to be made holy and to go to heaven, it's because of the Holy Trinity. Because there is a Spirit of God that has been breathed into the world, as we talked about last week on Pentecost, that has been breathed into us to give us divine life within us and to unite us to the Son, so that by suffering, even as St. Paul said, if only we suffer with him so that we may also be glorified with him, to unite us with that Son so that we may be brought by him into the unity and to the joy of a communion of love that is God. And we know these things not because we've been sitting in an armchair and figuring them out. We know these things because God himself wanted us to know not only what he is, but who he is. And to give us the knowledge of that mystery that makes everything matter and that has brought everything into existence.